Okay, and we are live. It's Animal Dreaming Publishing Radio Show today, and I'm really excited to have on board Anthea Wynn. Anthea, thank you so much for joining us today. It's so exciting to have you on the show.
My privilege and my pleasure. It's going to be fun, I'm sure.
Absolutely. We've got everyone waiting.
Everyone.
They're very excited. Very excited too. And I, for one, have been reading your book, and it's amazing. And I really love your unique look at things, I have to say. Like, it really does make you question, and I think it's so thought-provoking is something I have to say that I found, and really gets you thinking differently, which I think is fascinating.
You're breaking up a little bit, but look, thank you for that. The idea was to be thought-provoking, and I guess I ask the questions, and all the answers are channeled, and that I've just published, Animal Dreaming has published the answers we've got and pulled it together. The book sort of is constrained within the human planet Earth realms. We did at one point contemplate going off into the ether to talk about other galaxies and so on, but we all decided we had more important things to do. So, there's more than enough for us to understand. There's something in the background.
Yes. Yeah.
More than enough us to understand here on Earth without, travelling off to goodness knows where.
Awesome.
So
sharing your journey, like, how did this all start for you, Anthea? Because I've been fascinated to find that out.
Okay, how did I start all this? Okay. Oh, gosh, where do you start? I guess for many, many years, like 30, 40, I've lost track now. I've been, a lot of us, I suspect, had triggers that tipped us into spiritual interests, always as distinct from religious. So that was, 30, 40 years ago with the book by Shirley MacLaine called Out on a Limb. That was the start. So like any new fascination, you explore and you go to shows and you read books and you go to Mind, Body, Spirit expos. And at that stage, I was living in England. So plenty of stuff to explore over there. Anyway, in due course, about 15 years ago, I came back to live here. I couldn't cope with the English winters anymore. Oh, my God, ghastly. But the other reason was my mother then was still alive, aged 90, and I wanted to spend time with her. And I got another 7 years, which was fantastic. Anyway, when I got back here, and I should say I'm in Melbourne, and, this is in lockdown. We're still in lockdown. We're not going there. So I got settled back in Melbourne, and I discovered a local lady who was doing past life regressions. And so I went and had one session with her, and that was the catalyst, really. I'd wanted to do it for years, and all my life in England I could never find a regressionist. I could find people training regressionists, but I could never find anyone who was seeing. Now, looking back on it, I wasn't meant to do it until I got back to Melbourne. So, but you don't know that when you're in the middle of it. So that was fine. So I started with her, and we explored quite a few lives, and I learned a lot. I learned how to do it. Now, I won't do it professionally, but I have done it for friends. So I understand the process, if you like. And when I first learned, I had a New Zealand friend. His name's Clinton, and he was for many years, my channeling partner on this book as well. And the way I work was, I'm digressing here. So he was quite happy for me to practice doing past life regressions with him. And so off we went, and, we did one or two, and lo and behold, at the end of, a particular one, I said to him, is there anyone else there? He's in his trance state. I said, was there anyone else there who, you would like to, mention or whatever? And he said, yes. He said, it's Joseph. And I know, sorry. He said, it's one of my spirit guides. And I said, oh, yeah, okay. And so who's that? And he said, Joseph, at which I went like, what? And I said, is that, knowing you're not supposed to lead the subject when you're doing a past life regression, very hard at times. So I said to him, is this anyone we would know from history? And he said, well, yeah, it was Joseph, father of Jesus, at which I thought, I can't cope with this. Anyway, so that was the start, basically. That was the start. So from that, the short version is Joseph did turn up, and my subsequent books, I'll come back to The Soul on the Ceiling, my subsequent books are channeled biographies of significant Christian elders, including, Jesus. Sorry, guys.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, they're up there looking after us. Sorry.
No, that's perfect.
So we've been channeling, and anyone who's seen my website, antheawynn.com, will see it's a nice new website done by a lovely lady here in Melbourne. So there I have now got, over 10 years, a pentalogy. Now, this is a nice big word for publishing people. It basically means a suite or a bundle of 5 books. I thought quintet. Well, no, apparently pentalogy. Anyway, so we did all the channeling on and on and on for 10 years to do all this. But somewhere in the middle of it, I got the idea that I needed something more down to earth to get out as a book, partly to get my name better known in the publishing world and in, the whole spiritual world, this, whatever you want to call it, MBS world. So we somehow arrived at the idea of doing The Soul on the Ceiling. And that came out, when did that come out? Oh, I've lost track because I've done other books in between. 3-4 years ago, I've lost track. And that was great. So we all, and that is what you see, and that's what Animal Dreaming, published for me, and still have it on their books. So that was all good. Then when COVID came along, meantime we're all channeling, and I'm doing other books. I'll come back to the other books along the way. So when COVID came along, and everybody, as I'm sure everyone in Australia listening to this will know, nobody talked about anything else. It was boring as hell after a while. But I thought, maybe my spirit guide who channeled The Soul on the Ceiling is Saint Germain. And he actually is one of my spirit guides. So he agreed we could do an update. So we asked him, what's COVID all about? What's the purpose? This was early days when everybody was totally freaking out about the whole thing, and totally understandably. And people were remembering back to SARS and then the Spanish flu and, and all those horrible things. So 2 years ago, gosh, I'm not good at this, am I? Did an updated version. No, earlier this year, silly me, 6 months ago, we did an updated version, which I only published as an ebook for the simple reason that I figured even if COVID is around for a long time, and now bearing in mind 6 months ago we had no idea, even if COVID was around for a long time, interest in its underlying causes and so on might not be very long lasting. So in publishing terms, was it worth going to the effort and the cost of doing a print book? So I decided, and at that time we're still doing all these other biographies channeling, and that's where my focus was and still is. So that it was just easy to put it out there as an ebook. Now I have to be honest, it hasn't sold very well, but to be fair, I haven't pushed it very hard either. It's sitting up on Amazon, but that's fine.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, in a way, I might be persuaded simply because, and this is more talking about publishing. Do we want to talk about publishing rule things?
Oh, we'll talk about everything.
Yes? Okay, but because it was a very interesting learning curve. So your version was out there for 18 months and various people would give me feedback. And several people who were not particularly into the subject matter or into things spiritual at all said it was all a bit, basically the message I got in the end was I got the structure of this book wrong. And I spent a lot of time thinking about the structure and trying to make it logical. And it is very logical. When you see it, it steps through from what's the soul, what is it at birth, through life and death and into the discarnate world. And all left-brained. And then we talk about past lives in the book. Well, eventually these people who went into it said, well, you're effectively asking us to dive in the deep end. If I'd put the past life stuff first, people maybe understood and related to that. And then you can step forward and up the scale, if you like, into the soul material. So, oh gosh, that was a big learning curve about, for future books. Anyway, so the second edition with the COVID material in it has been restructured to reflect that. So I think as a book, it's a better structured book and probably easier to read. So anyway, so that's digressing. Okay, so we have a question, I think. Are we happy to do questions?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a few questions up here for you.
Okay, so this first one I can see is, hi, Maria, how can we learn about our past lives? Well, the only way I know of, and therefore I guess the best way, is to do past life regression. Now, I guess some people might be a bit anxious or a bit uncertain about that. I guess I never was. I'm not quite sure why. I've embraced it and loved it. You need to find a regressionist who is trained, but more so who you feel comfortable with. Now, you may feel, and because you have no idea, the first time you do it, you have no idea what's going to come out, what you're going to see. So you might feel more comfortable, as a woman, doing it with a woman. It's absolutely personal. I've worked with 3-4 people over the years, all here in Australia, one of whom is Paul Williamson, who was on your show a few weeks ago. And he's really good. No, I'm not here to plug him, but he is good. But, there are plenty of other people. And the other thing to say is there is more than one technique, is that the word, for doing, for the regressionist to use. I think Paul used hypnotherapy type techniques. The original lady who discovered, I suppose, is that the word, stumbled upon past lives was a lady called Dolores Cannon, who passed a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago. And she evolved her own technique, which is different. And there are other people as well. I've had experience of 2-3 different techniques, and they've all worked for me. So that's the best way. And it's easy and it's painless and it's non-intrusive. And my one message I always tell people is the first time you do it, you are likely to see a life or maybe lives which will be most helpful to you in this life. And my own experience was I certainly saw that, but it took me many years to understand its significance. So I'll leave that thought with you. Okay, so we have a message from Sean. Do I see souls as points of light? Well, this is really interesting because I'm not sure I physically see them as anything. And that sounds really dumb. When I do my channeling, and I'm assuming everybody understands channeling, it's like a form of mediumship, except where mediums, sorry, this is not completely digressing, where mediums will receive, over a lifetime of working, mediums will receive many thousands of messages destined for many thousands of people here on Earth. A channeler, on the other hand, works with a very small number of entities over a very long period. And I've worked with Saint Germain and these other folk for 10 years. And, I could count them on 2 hands, the number I've worked with. And Saint Germain is the main man. But, the others have all had very significant roles in their particular books. Anyway, that's digressing. So when I'm channeling, I can only do it with my eyes shut, but I see very vivid images in my head. Now, with the souls, I don't have I certainly don't see points of light. I don't see anything. I guess I just sense that they're sort of, and I thought about this question. Because, you know, there's plenty of things on this earth we know to be here, but we can't see or sense or smell. Air, we can't see or smell or feel air. Electricity, we can't see that until we unwittingly come into contact with it. I remember when I was living in England, the domestic gas supply went over to natural gas, which does not have a smell. And then there were all these accidents in the home, people forgetting to turn their stoves off. So they had to put a smell into the gas to make it safe. So, you know, that's a really vivid example. So coming back to the souls, I just see them, I just kind of sense they're, I haven't got a word for it. They're not things. There's nothing physical about them. They just are. They're just part of us, like the air and the electricity. I hope that's adequate. I don't quite know what else to say.
I think that's a great answer.
All right, thank you. Okay, we've got a question here from Shani, I'm not sure. Is there a limit to the number of times that we Sorry? Okay. Is there a limit to the number of times we reincarnate? My understanding is no. So then you've got to say why and what do we do and the whole cycle. My understanding, not always, you know, very big, fully understood, is that perhaps the Buddhist philosophy comes close, or maybe Hindu, one of those Eastern philosophies, that we come into a life to learn. And when we leave, I'll come back to that in a minute, it's actually in the book. And when we leave, we take those learnings back with us, or those lack of learnings, if we haven't achieved what we set out to achieve, back with us. And then when you back on the other side, you review that life you've just left against the goals you set when you first incarnate, or before you incarnated, you came in with a set of goals. And it's not goals like things, I want to learn to cook sausages. No, it's much more useful things like maybe humility or patience or tolerance. You know, so you go through life with encountering circumstances in which you have the opportunity to learn those things. Now, and because we all have human free will, we don't always, we all make choices. So we say, I don't want to do that today. So, you know, I won't go down that path. So we don't always, some people learn a lot. I doubt that very few people go back having met all their goals. You know, it's a bit a bell curve, like so. A few at the bottom end will have made, you know, met most of their goals. A few at the other end, sorry, I'll fall off this screen. A few at the other end will have not met any of those goals, but the vast majority in the middle will have met some of their goals to a varying degree. So we keep coming back to the question. We keep coming back to as long as we need to learn as much as we need. Now, don't ask me how much is, because I can't answer that. And my guess is it's going to vary for each individual. So, no, we can keep coming back thousands upon thousands of times.
All right, we've lost Anthea, I think. It's usually me disappearing, so we'll just see. Hang in there. Let me see. Oh, yeah, she's back. It's all good. She's coming back again. Some great questions, everyone. Thank you for sharing, because we are loving all these questions. How are you, Anthea? It just popped up out there for a minute. That's strange. Can you hear me now okay? Yep.
I've lost you.
Okay.
Gotcha. That's it. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Oh, great. Next question is, what do you think about time happening all at once? So multiple births and aspects of self at the same time, e.g. infinity. I think I'm too dumb to even understand the question, to be honest.
No, you're not. That's a complex question.
Sorry. Time happening all at once. So multiple births and aspects of self. I think I'll be honest, I think that question's outside my realm of what I've ever been told by my splendid guide. So I'm awfully sorry, Shane. I'm going to have to pass on that one.
That's fine. It's fascinating, isn't it? The different questions. Somebody here's put
Absolutely.
Do animals...
You know, I don't claim to have all the answers by a million miles. So, you know, but keep the questions coming. That's fine.
Just shared Francis's question now. That's a good one.
More.
Do animals reincarnate? She shared here.
Okay. Do you want me to keep talking? Maybe I should. I know I was talking to before the show started, and she was curious about how I got to this point. Well, I've talked about channeling these biographies and the soul on the ceiling. The biographies are still continuing, I have to say. We started out and we thought maybe a year or two. Well, after 3 or 4 years, because the Jesus story is absolutely mind-blowing. And a long, no, not, gosh, what to say, in the first, up to the crucifixion, which is all, you know, valid, it's very similar to what we all know and understand from whatever religious learnings we've acquired in our lives, Christian learnings, of course. But, okay, there's a whole new saga that goes on after that. So Jesus took us about, along with his parents and and his wife. Yes, now, you know, no cats out of the bag here. He married Mary Magdalene and they had several children in the end, but at the beginning, just one son. And I'm not the first person to raise that as a suggestion. I know in 1982, a book called The Holy Blood and the Holy Grail, based on, written by 3 co-authors, published in England, raised this subject, or raised this as a hypothesis, but they raised it on the basis of buckets of academic research. You know, the idea, and they're the most recent ones, I guess. Undoubtedly, there are people who've raised this as a suggestion in years gone by. I'm just not very good at the back history, to be honest. But anyway, so we thought Jesus would take, and his, you know, fellow speakers would take, we took 3 or 4 years, go away and edit. Well, editing, you know, this is getting back to publishing stuff. The editing is a far, far bigger process. And I have to say, if, you know, I claim to say that I'm an author, well, in the sense that my name is on these books. I'm not an author in the sense that words are I'm not like a novelist where every word they write is original thought and original words. These are all words that have been channeled through me, but what I have done, and I've had permission to do, I must add, is make them into decent English. Now, if you think about it, even this conversation we're having now, if it was transcribed literally, has got ums and ahs, and never mind the internet falling out and side comments that really make very bad reading. So that's my role, has really been to structure the books, to edit into good, readable English. And I have learned heaps and heaps along the way. I have, when was it, 3, 4 years ago, I decided I was nowhere near good enough, despite all this practice, and I went and did a diploma in professional writing and editing here in Melbourne, at which I learned heaps about all sorts of aspects. So really, that's been a huge blessing. I've now just recently joined the Institute of Editors, and my goodness, what do they call it? Institute of Professional Editors, Australia-wide, and my goodness, do they have some fantastic training, you know, professional development courses as well. Anyway, that's coming off the subject. I am a bit all over the place. So through the editing, of course, you then come up with more questions. And the process of these books started out by saying the upstairs folk who were managing this project said, we just wanted a single speaker to tell Jesus' story. Okay, that's fine. As time went on, other people up there apparently were watching and listening and saying, oh, well, perhaps I could contribute to this. You know, people like his brother James, who was a disciple, his first disciple, people like Peter, who the church claims Peter the Rock, on whom the church is founded, and all the others in the series. So over these subsequent years, these other people have all put up their hand and said, yes, please, we'd like to tell our story. So that's what's taking us all these years. And we still, the more you edit, the more questions you come up with. You find gaps in the story. Then as more people have spoken, we have found that maybe what, I can't think, Peter might have said might not agree with what maybe Matthew said, just by way of example. So we have to get clarification about all that. So that's why it's such a long process. Okay, now I'm waffling on a bit, aren't I? Francis has sent me a question. All right. Well, you call the shots, Tonya. I don't mind. Let's answer Francis's question. Do animals reincarnate? Well, that's a whole different subject. The issue is, and there's a wee bit in the Soul on the Ceiling about this, animals do not come in with a individual a soul as humans do. Animals come in with, I think the phrase was used, a collective soul in the same family. So the cat family, all the way from lions and tigers right down to tabby cats, will have a collective soul for the simple reason they're here on Earth really just to perpetuate that cycle of eating and breeding and raising the young, to then the young become adults and they repeat the cycle. And animals largely were intended, and this might sound contentious, but I stick with it, to be provide food as necessary for humans, part of the food chain, top of the food, so in that sense, they don't have free will. So they don't need an individual soul with all the decision making and the goals and so on that we come in with. So in that sense, it's a good question, actually. I'm not sure I partly answered it. I'm not sure I can do much more. I might have to find out about that. So I thank you for that.
It's a ripper.
Okay. All right. A question from Beck. A few years ago, I was visited by Mother Mary and was taken back by the vision she gave me. Is her appearance in such situations guidance or instruction to guide? Some aspects I cannot make sense of. Well, now there's a big question.
That's a great question. Thanks, Beck.
I'm not really sure. My sense would be, guidance is always going to be, they don't turn up unless they really want to tell you something. They've got other things to be doing up there than coming to see, little us, basically, unless they're coming with some good reason and purpose. I guess the thing to do would be to try and ask more questions. Now, if you are able to, maybe in a meditation state or in a trance state, go back and find her and just ask the questions in your head and see what she or maybe somebody else around her is able to tell you, to guide you. And some aspects you can't make sense of. Possibly, like I was saying before, that it took me a long time, years, to understand the first past lives I saw. So it might be in that same style of thing. So that would be my guess. Maybe a hypnotherapist or even a past life regressionist would be able to help in that regard. That would be my best suggestion.
Yeah, I love, let me see. I think I'm just back on. Let me know what you can see, if you can hear me. Here we go. Anthea's back. Oh, we've got to love the internet, don't we?
Yeah.
They're testing us today. I love it. It's usually me falling out.
Well, I thought I had a fairly good, well, anyway, never mind. That's boring stuff to talk about. Okay. Now, any more questions? No.
It's going back to pretty much. Sean had put a couple.
Okay.
There was one about the soul shattering.
Yeah, right. Okay. Now this is fascinating. I've never come across the concept of shoals. Listen to me. Souls shattering. My understanding is a soul is a bundle of energy. Now that's a bundle's a bad word, but I don't know what other word to use, which is remains intact, bound together like an atom. No, don't go there, because we know we can shatter atoms. That's what not I meant at all. bad analogy. But like I don't know. Anyway, intact, totally immutable, undestroyable. Is that a word? And forever, for eternity. So when atomic bombs drop, when, heaven forbid, but we know they did. Now I can tell you, I can recount this, and it is in the book as well. I actually had a life as a child in Hiroshima when the bomb was dropped. I was 4 years old. And of course, I don't, in my conscious head, remember anything about this, but I have done a past life regression around it. And what I saw was, what the main thing I took away from that was that the soul, along with all the thousands of others who died in that split second, just like that, went whoosh, gone, whoosh, out of here as under, speed of light or more, to get out of there. But then the physical, I can only speak personally, my body was vaporized, is the only word I can think of. It was, if people die under normal conditions, even dreadful conditions, there is still a physical body left. But the energy generated from that atomic explosion was so vast that lots and lots and lots of bodies were just melted. Vaporized is the only word. At the instant that they were hit by the bomb, or that'll do, the explosion. So horrible thing. So, but my soul, I don't have any sense. My soul split, and I reincarnated into this life not too long after that. So I don't think, I'm not sure that this idea of soul splitting, I've not come across it. So I don't really, to be honest, subscribe to it. But it's just my take on it, Yeah. Okay. All righty. Another question from Beck. What is your theory on soul swapping? Well, now this is an interesting phrase. I don't think, in my world and my understanding, souls don't swap. It's not like one walks in and the original one leaves and a new one swaps over. In that sense, it doesn't happen like that.
Isn't it interesting? As we get to the really crucial part, Anthea drops out. She'll be back. I think we're in Victoria, and I think everything's playing up. It's like internet playing up. You name it, the things are a little bit unstable. I think we're both in Victoria, Anthea. I think it's just how the internet's going for us.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So soul swapping, sorry. So my understanding is that does not happen. Now, if you think about it, a soul comes in at some point around birth, as described in the book, and has undertaken to stay with that human for the duration until death. And that's come, as I said, with its goals and things to learn. So as the child grows to teens to an adult, it's learning, the human is learning, but the soul is also learning from those human experiences. So if the soul was to swap out at, say, the age of 30, all that learning's gone, and the future learning is lost for the next 30 or 40 years or whatever. And if a new soul was to come in at that point, it comes in cold. It knows nothing about this human. It knows nothing about what it's learned already. It probably would know very little about what it's here to do. So I can't see how that concept works at all. Now, the extension on from that is the concept, again, I talk about in the book, which is walk-ins, they're called. And this isn't even, it's not a phrase I'd particularly come across, but it's not new. There was an American channeler whose name was Ruth Armstrong. Oh, anyway, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, I think she died about the 70s, who was a very strong channeler, and she talks about walk-ins as well. Now, let me come back to her because that's interesting. What I was told about walk-ins are they come in to complement and enhance the original soul. A walk-in, and it doesn't happen very often. It will, if a soul has got a big goal for this life and maybe needs extra support, then they will have agreed, these two souls will have agreed before incarnation that this plan is what they will undertake. The usual time, the best time, if there can be such a thing, is around in the teens, so that the incoming soul is usually saying, I don't want to do the childhood training, learning to walk, potty training, whatever. So I'll come in when the human is adult in physical terms, and these days increasingly in all sorts of terms. So it will join, and so the two will. This is the general plan, and there's always exceptions to the rule. So they will blend and merge like so, and go through to death, with giving that enhanced energy and support for whatever that human's purpose is in life and path is in life. I have a walk-in, and mine, and this is not, it's in the book, it's all for there to read. My walk-in occurred about 10 years ago. Now you can say, aha, she said earlier that she started this work 10 years ago. Boom, boom, exactly right. And that was the point. And my walk-in was somebody I knew in this life, my life, now. And he was a colleague in London. And he passed, I don't know, I've lost track now, not too long before that, about 10, 11 years ago. So we obviously had this agreement to do this work, and he's sitting here now talking to you as much as I'm talking to you. And so have I noticed a difference? That's an interesting question, because I was aware when it was happening. That's a funny thing to say. Anyway, my Saint Germain obviously has helped me understand all this. After a while, maybe a year or something, I started noticing that I was using big words in ordinary conversation that I wouldn't have used in the past. And the first time it happening, I was driving along, where did that come from? And then I was more alert. And then I realised, because my walk-in soul was an extremely intelligent man in his life. Extremely intelligent, unbelievable. So I'm blessed, no question, to have his intelligence added in. Probably is why I'm being so articulate and, with it today. I wouldn't be at all surprised. He was really good. So that's my take on walk-ins. And I don't walk-out is the other sort of concept. I don't overly buy it, and I've not come across Saint Germain talking about it. The idea is you come together to enhance this life, and you go through to the end together. So that's my understanding. Yes. What's my take on twin flames? I don't know, mate. I haven't got all the answers. And to be honest, I don't even really properly understand that phrase, twin flames. I know it's used is twin flames different from soulmates? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So I think certainly do not want to mislead anyone listening to this. So I think on that, I'm sorry, I think I'm going to pass on that one as well. Tammy, hi. The beginning of my life was an unfinished life.
That's interesting.
I don't understand the question I'm saying. So are you saying that was carried forward from a previous life, or?
Yeah, maybe expand on that, Tammy, if you can. That would be great. Just expand a little bit on that so that we can get what you meant by that. That is an interesting question. Can I say, Anthea, we've never had so many interesting questions as having you on the show. So you're very inspirational, and I do too. It's amazing.
I'm happy to come back again.
I think no doubt that will be happening.
Okay. Well, that's fine. I'm happy. Yeah.
I love it, and I really do think, like, for all of those that have posted on here, you've got it. If you haven't got the book, you'll be blown away with the information, and it's the kind of book that you could read a few times to really, really absorb all the information.
That's a really good point. I think the other thing, and I tell people, particularly if they're new to this sort of subject matter, two things. You do not have to read it sequentially. And if you are a real beginner, I've told a number of friends, jump to whatever, chapter 7, I think, which is about the past lives. And that's a much easier, as I was saying earlier, introduction. If you're happy starting from the beginning, it is logical, but just for heaven's sake, read as much as you can handle in one reading. And if you put it down and come back a week later, it doesn't matter. And if you want to jump the chapters around, all of that's perfectly legitimate, and you won't lose anything in reading it in a disjointed fashion like that. I feel very different after 10-year-old. So are you, Tammy, are you saying you think you might have had a walk-in? That is possible by the sounds. It's a bit hard to say from such a small amount of information.
That's interesting.
Or perhaps maybe the easier thing, if you want to send me an email through my website, antheawynn.com, then I'd be happy to get back to you.
Beautiful.
Or through Facebook, obviously. I have a Facebook page. A few goes, okay. All right, look, I think if you don't mind, we'll leave that previous question. Is that okay, Tonya?
Yeah, I think that sounds great. All right. Tammy can explore that with you.
All right. Yeah. Okay, another one from Beck. A few years ago, I was struggling. I'd been through a traumatic relationship breakup and had been living in the UK. A friend I'd never met physically passed with breast cancer, and one evening I was talking to her in spirit and told her she could have my body. I woke up the next day with an English accent, and I've seen doctors and psychologists and no one can explain it. I suggest, look, I can't answer that. I've not heard of that situation. Now, that doesn't mean it's not real. Absolutely. And for everybody, any unusual experience is totally real for them. So please, I'm absolutely not dismissing it. My suggestion would be to explore that further, is to either do a past life regression and ask specifically the person doing the regression to say, this is what's happened and that's what you want to explore. That they can then help guide you towards that situation. And if you're not comfortable doing that, then try some hypnotherapy. Might also be another way of explaining it. I think things like a situation like this, doctors and psychologists are just right, not to be dismissive, they have a huge role in our lives. But in this world, don't waste your money. That's a bit blunt, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay. And I've had it with me ever since. Well, that's just fantastic. It's what I was saying about my walk-in. It's just wonderful. It's a real blessing. I take it as a privilege and a blessing. Now, that's a human reaction, but, we're here to have human experiences. Okay, let's move on. Hi. Are soulmates destined to be with each other over various lives? Well, I guess it comes back to what I was saying before. How do we actually define soulmates? I mean, I'm sure many of us, particularly who are tuned in spiritually, have met people who we instantly think, oh, I know you, or mate, if that's what we mean by a soulmate, then my personal experience is these are people I've definitely had past lives with. And, and often several, not just one. My walk-in, I've seen 2 or 3, I can't remember, past lives with him. One was here in Victoria. Oh, one was many years. The one here in Victoria was in about the 1850s. Another one in Spain in a monastery. Many years before, 100 years probably before that. So, they vary. So when I met him in this life, it was a bit like, it wasn't quite, we didn't quite click, but it was certainly a strong enough connection that we went on to work together, until I came back to Australia, basically. So that would be the best way to explore that, would be my suggestion. Okay. Thank you, Beck. Lovely comment. That's nice. Okay. Now, what else? Can I help anyone else? Or Tonya, have you got any deep, pressing questions?
Well, a couple, because I know I've got a couple of friends that messaged me and said, for someone starting out to connect with, well, I suppose, like you say, seeing a past life is best to go to somebody professional. But for those starting out that maybe want to channel, like that have drawn to, want to be able to just start channeling from a very, obviously just a starting point, what would you recommend for that process?
Well, that's a good question, actually. I kind of fell into it, and after I discovered I could do this, I didn't do any training. As a consequence of these, like I was saying in the beginning, when I was doing these past life regressions with Clinton, I then discovered, it was just coming through. And quite a long while later, Saint Germain told me I was able to spontaneously channel. Now, I've certainly heard of that happening to other people. So coming back to, I don't know how you would train to be a channel, to be honest, but I don't think there's a great dividing line between being a medium and being a channel. And there are certainly mechanisms for training to be a medium. And then you can maybe focus, just say, I want to do channeling work rather than mediumship. Now, the medium, the one I know of best, and certainly there will be people out there, practitioners, who will be able to train you. But the one I know about, and I have operates with great integrity, please, not to impugn that others don't, right? Is the I live, as I said, live in Melbourne. So the Victorian Spiritualist Union is a church, they wouldn't use the word Christian, but their ethos is that their purpose in life is to demonstrate that life does not end at death. So let's not go there. They practice what they preach, and they have training courses which they call development circles for people to become mediums, because part of their services, regular Sunday services, is to have mediums demonstrate and bring readings through for people in the congregation. So if I wanted to learn, I would be very comfortable because of that integrity that they have. So yeah. I can suggest, look, maybe I should email me separately. I can only speak for Melbourne. I don't know about any elsewhere in Victoria. So send me an email separately, and I'm happy to give you some suggestions. Yes, indeed. Thank you, Di.
Yeah. I love Paul. I actually had a session with Paul not that long ago, and I found him great. So you've had more extensive experience, Di, and Anthea.
Well, Paul, I don't want to be seen to recommending people, and so people I've worked with have varied. One woman who was extremely good is not practicing at the moment for personal family reasons. So, but certainly Paul, absolutely, and he's obviously evolved the mechanism for doing it through Zoom, and he's an extremely gentle person. He's a gentle soul himself. So as well as being extremely experienced. So, certainly he would be a good way to go. Yeah. And he's got a website, so you know, well, animal dreaming people will be able to tell you where to find him, or just Google him. I mean, you know, obviously, yes, yeah. Okay, anybody else?
So can I also ask about your books, Anthea? Like, obviously, I've read this one, but you've got how many more on the go? Like you were sharing that earlier. 5.
I'm trying to juggle 5 balls up in the air. Now, okay, let me talk a little bit about these. These are all these channel biographies. They're really autobiographies, if we're being, honest. So in sequence, and this is all part of our learning, this sequence has only evolved in my head in the last 6 months, 4 months. Thank you, lockdown. Anyway, so the first in this, and the sequence is largely based on chronological order of appearance, so to speak. So the first one is John the Baptizer. I call him John the Baptizer. So it's his life story. And at the moment, that's a fairly short story. And it's fairly consistent with what you would expect. Not totally, but fairly consistent with what you'd expect. The next one is Jesus, which, as I said, is huge, this book. My editing challenge is to get this down to a publishable length. And I'm working on massive. Anyway, I've had lots of help I have to acknowledge, sorry, I'm not changing the subject, acknowledge my team of helpers. I've got people all over the country who have been fantastic beta readers, sending me back comments, what about this, what about that? Yeah, wonderful stuff, which I couldn't manage without them. So that's really fabulous. So Jesus is the next, and then and that's a chronological time. The one that follows that is Matthew, who was one of the disciples, and who our stories say was a tax collector, a Roman tax collector who turned Jew. Well, our stories say he wasn't a tax collector; he was a Roman scribe, working, and he was born and bred Jewish. And he got fascinated with Roman writing, learnt it, got a job, and then later in life, sort of the fascination wore off, I think, with being a Roman, living a Roman life. And he heard Jesus and the disciples, and he became a disciple. So that's a little different from our general understanding. The next one is Peter, who was a scribe as well, interestingly, Jewish. All these folk were Jewish, no question. No Christianity in this. The word had never been invented. All Jewish people living in Jewish territory, roughly where today the area we would call Israel and Palestine. And so Peter was a scribe working in the Temple on the Mount. Now, I think we call it the Temple Mount, I think so, because they had, even in those days, local Jewish temples had scrolls that they used in their services, and these would get torn or worn out or whatever, and need replacing. So the purpose of that scribing department was to offer that service to their local temples. So he was a scribe in there. Anyway, he went on to become, he lived in Turkey for a while, and he became a diplomat and a traveller and an interpreter. So I'll say no more. Now, he is supposed to be what's the phrase? The rock. Jesus told him that Peter would be the rock on which the church is founded. I think that's roughly about it. Well, I hate to say it, their timelines didn't even overlap. So, fascinating reading. And then the last in the series, which we've only channeled relatively recently, is Paul the Apostle. Paul, no, not the Apostle, wrong. The Evangelizer. And he certainly went out. By the time Paul was born almost, Jesus, it was after the crucifixion, so Jesus wasn't around. But he heard Jesus' messages, and he picked up on them, and he believed in them enough. He went on and preached them endlessly, and ended up being under Roman patronage in order to spread these messages throughout vast parts of the middle Roman Empire, I guess, European, from Rome out and around, around that because the Roman Empire went miles in every other direction. So that's his story. So they're the 5. And there are interesting links between these people, which are too hard to describe without a map, and we're not going to do that. That's too heavy. It's on the web. If you are really fascinated, it's on the website. And if you've got questions from that, email me. That would be great. That's by the by. So they're the books. Now, but with no disrespect whatsoever to Trudy and Scott, my guide, Saint Germain, has said right from the beginning that they want, these stories are so important that they want a traditional publisher, not for any reason that self-publishing is in any way a lesser process, but they want to be able to say that when I'm long gone and 50, 100, 200 years into the future, that these material will still be available to be published, republished, reprinted, whatever. So that's my goal. And look, all of that sounds hugely arrogant on my part. Let me just say, I am but a messenger. I am nothing else. Seriously, I shut my eyes, tune in, open my mouth, put the recorder on, and off we go. Seriously.
And I'm a messenger.
Yes, absolutely. I'm a messenger and an editor, and that's it. And sadly, I'm a marketer too, because I don't enjoy that much, but not many authors do. So that makes me fairly normal. Yes, yeah. So that's the future books. So anyone listening to this who would any contacts in professional publishers, not professional, they're all professional, traditional or a literary agent, that would be equally welcome. And please, I would love to hear from you.
No, beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. It's been fascinating. And I know just not me, but everyone on this feed has been fascinated listening to you and sharing all your knowledge. So, Anthea, thank you so much for coming on and making it a wonderful show.
My pleasure. And thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it, I have to say. Thank you, Tonya. It's been great. Okay.
Thank you so much. Take care. I'm sure we'll have you on again.